This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have my good friend John Merrill. John's my old buddy. He comes on once a year, if not more often. He's Secretary of State of Alabama, former legislator, and serving his first term as Secretary of State. Won a very impressive race for Secretary of State. The only good race we had statewide last time. Here we are in 2016. He's got his hands full, doing a great job as Secretary of State, running that office well. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's always good to be with you, friend.
My old friend John Merrill, he's not old, he's a young man. John's not 52 years old.
Yes, sir.
You know, I love to tell this about old John. He and I both are political historians, and his granddaddy and his roots are in Cleburne County. And his daddy was probate judge of Cleburne County, what, for 3 terms? 4?
Well, he was circuit clerk 2 terms and then probate judge for 1, so 18 years consecutively there.
So John grew up in Cleburne County with political roots, had an uncle that was on the Supreme Court, Pol Merrill.
Pelham, yes, sir, 24 years, and he was in the House for 12 before that.
I didn't know that.
Yes, sir. He was the Speaker Pro Tem of the House.
Was he pro tem?
Yes, sir.
Did he have part of Calhoun?
No, sir. Had Randolph and Cleburne.
Hey, John, you kenned old Hugh Merrill?
Yes, sir.
He was in the legislature.
Yes, sir. And he was in the House for 24 years and Chairman of Ways and Means for 16 years.
He was from Calhoun, though,
That's
wasn't he?
right. That's right.
So y'all off but the neck of the woods?
Yes, sir.
Well, John, you got a lot of political people in your family.
Yes, sir.
And you were talking about seeing old John Patterson. Tell folks
Yes,
about
sir.
old John
Old
Patterson.
Governor Patterson is
He's
still
95.
in great spirits and great health and just doing very, very well. He and Miss Tina living up in Tallapoosa County and excited to have a nice farm out there and just doing great. We saw him at Kalijah's and had lunch there at Kalijah's in Tallapoosa County one Sunday afternoon.
He comes in for lunch up there.
Yes, sir.
You know, I wrote a column you said you liked about where everybody was now. And I talked about him first, being 95. He lives on his ancestral land. That's his family roots is up there.
Yes, sir.
Around Gold and Tallapoosa County.
Yes, sir.
And he's got a pet goat.
Yes, sir.
That goat took up with him. Her name's Rebecca, and she comes in the living room and just sits there and watches you while you have conversations. She'll look at you and then look at him, and he'll say, "Hush, get out of here. Get out of here, Rebecca. Go on, put outside." And get outside, and she'll look in the window at you.
Yes, sir.
She'll stare in the window at you like, you know. Ed Bridges loved to tell that story. You know, I love to have you and Ed Bridges on the show.
Ed Bridges is a treasure.
He's one of the best guests I have on the show. You and he are 2 of my best guests. Because y'all, of course, he knows Alabama history more than everybody
does.
put
Yes, sir.
together.
Yes, sir.
He can sit here, John, and talk about Indians. He knows the roots. You being Alabamian, having roots like you do in the state, you appreciate he can tell you exactly where those Indians, like the young ladies that work for you now, that came from Elmore County, like the roots up there. They don't understand how those Indians settled that area of the state so much, and how the creeks were up there.
Right.
And the Red Eagle. But going back to your roots in Cleburne County, I love to tell this story, and I'll tell it in a column. I actually got it in the book, as you know, my book, Goats and Governors.
Yes, sir.
That you talking about your roots being from Cleburne County, and so you had 2 home bases, like Big Jim did in '46. You know, you had that Cleburne County roots where your daddy was probate judge, was circuit clerk in the courthouse up there so long.
Yes,
and then
sir.
Hugh Merrill was in the legislature. Pol Merrill was the Supreme Court. Then you grew up SGA president at Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama, and then you settled in Tuscaloosa. So you had 2 home bases.
Yes, sir.
And you look at the results of that election, and you ran like a scalded dog through those areas. Same way Bentley did.
Yes, sir.
Through that
Absolutely.
area.
Absolutely.
But I love it. The one old box up there in Cleburne County got 100%. It got every vote.
Yes, sir.
What box
There
was
were
that?
2 boxes up there in Muscadine and Edwardsville where we got every
vote.
Yes, sir.
How many votes were in the box?
Yes, sir. I don't remember that, but the most impressive thing to my daddy was the shutout and getting 100%. And of course, we got 91% of the vote in the county overall.
Had he worked that box that when he called you that night, he was proud of it.
He was so proud. You know, he called Steve and he said, "We're going to move to Fruithurst." He was so happy.
Was Fruithurst where that box was?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's right there on the line. Fruithurst
Yes, sir.
is right on the
Yes, sir,
Georgia
it
line.
is.
Speaking of that, I'm going to ask you your thinking on this, but I have written this, and I believe it. Alabamians are going to buy lottery tickets. I don't care how you cut it. People are going to buy lottery tickets. And the biggest lotteries are bought on the Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida line.
Right.
We're just throwing that money away. I mean, that Powerball thing back in February, I'm not going to ask your opinion about it, but that just seems almost ludicrous. We throw that $200 million away. And that's conservative.
Millions of dollars.
That's
it was.
conservative, John.
And you know, we had a couple of legislators that brought some legislation for conversation this time about the lottery and about what would happen. And it was interesting because Senator Marsh was so interested in advancing that legislation last year in 2015, but this year kind of cooled his heels and was not interested in promoting that. But I know Senator McClendon had brought it, and there was a great deal of discussion about it, but it never seemed to gain traction this session.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. It was very interesting.
You know, I don't understand that either, but because the average Republican voter would vote for that thing, you know, not because they want to buy a lottery ticket. I mean, everybody, they're saying that's just ludicrous to let our money go out of states with. But I'm not going to get off on that. But what I wanted to ask you about, this is such a good year for presidential politics, and you've done a good job running the show.
Thank you.
Tell me, you've also kept folks abreast of who came to the state.
Yes, sir. And we were very excited to be in a position to do that, Steve, because our involvement in the SEC primary, of course, is what put us in a position to be able to move forward with that. And, of course, that was conceived of by Brian Kemp, who's the Secretary of State in Georgia. But then when we got involved, especially intimately involved, after I went to the meeting in Santa Monica, California in December of 2014 and met the Secretary of State of Iowa and talked to him.
That's right, you got elected.
Yes, sir. And, you know, when he was telling me that unless an Iowan meets a presidential candidate 8 times, that they're not coming to our state to visit with our people are not going to vote for them, then I knew that we had to do something. And, of course, our people were very receptive, and I asked Quentin Ross to carry the bill for me in the Senate. I asked Ed Henry to carry it for me in the House. So it was a bipartisan legislation, the most liberal Democrat, the most conservative Republican. And, of course, we passed the legislation almost unanimously. We were able to advance it, and then the governor signed it. And after that, we reached out to candidates and tried to get them to come to Alabama. And, you know, didn't have a whole lot of success as we were initiating the process. But then I was invited by the Red State Gathering to go over there by Eric Erickson, who puts that together every year. And this year it was in Atlanta. He wanted me to come over there and speak, and so Cindy and I went over there. But the bigger thing was getting to meet with 9 of those top Republican presidential candidates as they came and sell each one of them on why they needed to come to Alabama. And of course, I've told you before that Senator Cruz and Heidi invited us to travel with them in our state, and we did that on their campaign bus.
You didn't endorse anybody, though, did you?
Well, we did.
Did you endorse
I endorsed
Cruz?
Mike Huckabee.
You bet.
Yes, sir.
I
did. And Cindy and I actually went to Iowa and campaigned with Governor Huckabee.
Did you?
The week before the Iowa caucus.
I like old Huckabee.
Oh, he's a great man. And
he just didn't get any traction.
Couldn't get any traction this time, Steve. I told some people, you know, my endorsement of Governor Huckabee was so strong that the day that I endorsed him, he went from the #1 debate stage to the #2 debate stage the same day.
Well, you're not as bad as me. Let me tell you what I did, how bad I am at presidential politics. 8 years ago, I don't endorse candidates. I just wrote that Fred Thompson was going to be the Republican nominee, and he was going to be president because he was tall, gravelly voiced, you know, just had gravitas, and U.S. Senator, 12 years from Tennessee, looked like a president, Watergate, movie star, and even his wife called me from Nashville and thanked me for the column after I said he was going to win, and doggone, he dropped out next week.
I know, he just never called.
I mean, I don't have any, and I picked. I said Bush was going to win this time.
Yes, sir.
I said it was going to be Bush Clinton.
Right.
So whoever I say, you best know they ain't going to win.
Well,
you know, now I'm better at governor's races.
Sure.
But as far as presidential, I'm 0 for whatever. You
yes,
know. I picked Bush. I said
right.
Bush was going to win.
Well, and I thought Governor Bush was an outstanding candidate, but the people just never got interested in supporting someone who was a mainstream Republican candidate that had been successful in elective office before. And, you know, Mr. Trump came with his message of change and came with his message of I can get things done, and his record of being a very successul businessman, and he was able to convince
Did you see that
people.
coming?
Oh, no, absolutely
I mean,
not.
like when you, what month did you endorse Huckabee?
Not until the 1st of November. And then, you know, we started having all the traffic in August.
Yeah.
And we went and
Who were the first ones here? Scott Walker came?
The first one to come after we passed the legislation was Governor Kasich.
Yeah.
And you remember in a span of 8 days, we had 6 of the top Republicans.
Who all was
at one
it?
time. We had Governor John Kasich in Birmingham. The following Friday night, we had Mr. Trump in Mobile.
Yeah, had
and
a big
several
crowd.
members from our team went down to visit with him.
You could tell he was fixing to catch on then.
Well,
couldn't you?
look, he had 30,000
I know.
people at Ladd People Stadium, which is still the single largest political gathering for any candidate in either party in this election cycle.
Probably as much as George Wallace ever got.
Oh, it was unbelievable. The next morning, Governor Walker was in Talladega, and the following Tuesday, Dr. Carson was out at Pike Road here in Montgomery County. And then that night, Senator Cruz was back. He was in Tuscaloosa at the Lincoln-Reagan dinner. And then the following morning, Governor Bush was in Birmingham. So in 8 days, we had 6 of the top 10 Republicans come, which was unprecedented in the history of the state. You know, subsequently, we had all of the major Republicans come. And Senator Sanders came, drew 7,100 people at Boutwell Auditorium in January. And Hillary Clinton came 3 times to Alabama. And President Clinton came the weekend before the vote on March 1st.
Well, we had some traffic because of that.
Yes, sir.
We won't see them much anymore, though, because we're a Republican state, whoever the
Yes, sir.
Republican
I
is.
think Secretary Clinton may come back one time between the convention and the general election, and the Republican nominee will probably come once, maybe twice if they're in the area.
Are you going to the Republican convention?
Well, we're still talking about that. We haven't decided if we're going to go or not, but we're still talking about the possibility of going. Obviously, I won't be going as a delegate for anyone.
Do you perceive, what do you think will happen out there? What if Trump doesn't get them? I don't want to put you on the spot, it's political.
No,
what
but let's
you
be
think should
serious,
happen.
Steve.
What do you think will happen?
You know, this is the thing. Mr. Trump has not won a primary in the last 2.5 weeks. So after Super Tuesday and the week after that, and then after Florida, which was March the 15th, he hadn't had a whole lot of success.
He just carried New York, though.
Yeah, well, he will as it comes up next week, but he just has not had a whole lot of success. And Senator Cruz has been making some inroads. Now, I don't think Senator Cruz can muster a campaign to dethrone him as the front runner, but I think he and Governor Kasich may be able to get enough to keep him from winning outright and receiving the 1,237 delegates that are necessary for the nomination. And if that happens, you know, all bets are off on what will happen at the convention. And a lot of people are saying, well, if he gets the most states going in, he has the most delegates going in, but he doesn't have a majority, he ought to get it anyway. Well, I'll remind you of 2 races. I'll remind you of what occurred with the race in 1968 when Bobby Kennedy had the most delegates and then he was assassinated, and then Gene McCarthy had the most delegates and Hubert Humphrey became the nominee. And then I'll remind you of the change that occurred in 72 and then in 76 again to ensure that the way things were happening at the Democrat convention were modified. That's when they started the superdelegates in 1984. So I don't know that that it will work out the way that he intends for it to, but anything's possible now.
Be interesting to follow, won't it?
Yes, sir.
Maybe fun to go out there. Well, tell me this, what about, getting back to your particular job, what takes more of your time, election stuff or just the mundane stuff like business services?
Yes, sir. The business services aspect of our office is at least 60% of everything that goes in our office each and every day.
Going through corporations.
Yes, sir.
You know, back before you were Secretary of State, the people running for that office were complaining that the former Secretary of State's office took them like 3 months to get a corporation process. You got that streamlined?
Well, we have gotten it down now to less than 2 months, and we are moving, and it was 9 months when we started campaigning.
That's what I was thinking,
yes, sir. But we've gotten it down to less than 2 months now as we move toward getting everything done within a 1-day time frame. And that's our goal, Steve, is to make sure that when people file, they can get all of their paperwork completed at the state and local level within a 24-hour period.
John, how many employees do you have?
We have 41 employees as of today.
But now y'all had more than that. You cut your office down.
Yes, sir. Now, I'll tell you what happened, Steve. We had 42 people. And
when you took the job?
Yes, sir. But the first day, I hired 7 new.
Yes, sir. How many of those are merit system? How many can you hire?
Well, when it started, we could only hire 2.
How many you got now?
And now we've got 4 that we can hire because of the legislation.
So you got about 36
passed.
merit system people?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Well, actually, no, sir. We have probably, well, it's 37. 37. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But we've had 14 people leave our office since we started.
These merit system people?
Yes, sir. 14. So even though we've replaced some of those, you know, we're back
some
up.
Some of them was kind of dead wood, wasn't it?
Well, I wouldn't call them dead wood. Let's just say this: we have some outstanding state employees. We have some that need to find something else to do outside of state.
So government. They weren't functioning. They were taking their job. You kind of got them straightened out. Didn't
you? We have a certain level of expectation for the people that work in the office of the Secretary of State about what standards need to be met and what processes need to be followed. And we expect for people to do a day's work for a day's pay. And if they do, then everything's lovely. And if it's not, then we need to help them find something else to do outside of state government.
Well, tell me this. So you've got when you took that job, you've cut the budget some, hadn't you?
Oh, yes, sir. We actually...
You did on your own. The legislature ain't necessarily...
Yes, sir. I tell you, we did 2 things, Steve. During the first year, we actually cut spending out of our office $929,039.13.
What was the original from what to what? What was that? What was
well,
what
we renegotiated some agreements with contracts and services that were being provided to the office, as well as cutting employees. And when you added all of that up, line by line on the renegotiation and restructuring, that's what it got to. But we also went to the legislature and we asked them to cut us completely out of the general fund budget last year, to zero us out so we would have no appropriation coming from the general fund. We felt like if we did that, we could help them, even though it was just $2.3 million. But we also knew that we could make up that money with our business services aspect. We just asked them to allow us to free up the columns where that money was going so that we could spend it where it needed to be spent in the office. We got legislation on that going through right now.
John, what about, you know, so many of the Democratic legislators and even nationwide people have criticized the southern states for passing the voter ID law.
Yes, sir.
Defend that, if you would, and tell us whether it's good or
Steve,
bad.
It's really not even a conversation. We have not had a single incident reported to us in 2014 in the primary or the runoff or the general election. Had no incidences reported from the March 1st presidential primary where people were going to vote and denied access because of the lack of a particular photo ID or for the opportunity for them to participate because they didn't have an appropriate photo ID. But you know, we've stepped forward and we've done everything we could to ensure that every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of Alabama is registered to vote and has a photo ID so they can participate in the process. We started by reaching out to all 140 legislators and asking them to give us locations in their district where they wanted us to go to conduct voter registration and photo ID drives. We did that. We went to those places, and then we reached out to the probate judges and we said, give us a can't miss festival in your area. So we went to the Peanut Butter Festival in Brundage. We went to the Rattlesnake Rodeo in Opp. We went to the Peanut Festival in Dothan, went to the Magic City Classic in Birmingham, because that's where people are and we want to be with them. Then of course we know that the Board of Registrar's offices are open each and every day in all 67 counties. But after we did all of that, we involved Coach Saban and Coach Malzahn.
Yeah, I saw that.
Got them to make those commercials for us. We produced those posters to initiate the conversation about voter registration and photo ID. But I think the thing that has really hit it more than anything, Steve, is our introduction of the electronic registration system.
Explain that.
Yes, sir. On January 22nd, we introduced the process.
This is something you did.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. January 22nd. Didn't even make an announcement about it. We just started it live. And we had 15,000 people used the system from January 22nd till February the 1st, which was the day that we introduced it publicly with a statewide news conference. But between January 22nd and February the 15th, which was the last day to register before the March 1st primary, we had 61,089 users of the system. Now, subsequently, we've had almost 100,000 people use the system since it started.
They just go online and register
Yes,
to
sir.
vote.
And so some people would ask me, okay, well, what is the secure mechanism that's in place to ensure that people are able to do this and not say that I'm Steve Flowers, or to modify Steve Flowers' recognition in the system? Using driver's license. Because your driver's license, there may be more than one Steve Flowers in Montgomery County. There may be more than one in Pike County.
Yeah.
But there's not more than one with the same driver's license number and the same birthday and the same Social Security number.
So it's as safe as going to the registrar.
Exactly.
They got to show their driver's license there.
Yes, sir. And it's safer because you can do it in-house. Now, let me go back to this voter photo ID before we leave it. I had a legislator from Birmingham call me. She was concerned because she had a constituent that couldn't get out and get a photo ID. Well, we had one of the people in our office contact him and talk to him to see what his situation was. After we talked to him, we realized he didn't actually need an ID. There's certain exemptions that we put in the law in 2011 when we passed it. And he wasn't required to have an ID to participate in the absentee process. But we sent him a letter, and we sent him a copy of the code section showing him that he didn't have to have it. He talked to her again. He still wanted the ID. So she called me and told me that. So this time I called him, and I said, Mr. Stayer, his name's Sam Stayer, he's in downtown Birmingham. I said, you got the letter we sent you? He said, I did. I said, you got the copy of the code section, so you know you don't need the ID. He said, I did. I said, but you still want the ID, don't you? And he said, I do. And I said, well, Mr. Stayer, are you going to be at your house on Saturday, October the 31st? And he said, I will. He said, I can't get out because I'm homebound. And I said, a young man from our office, my Deputy Chief of Staff, John Bennett, he's going to call you. He's going to set up a time. He's going to come to your house with an intern from our office, Trevin Fluker, and they're going to make you a photo ID in your bed in your house that day. Are you okay with that? And he said, I'm absolutely fine with that. Now, why do I tell you that, Steve? I tell you that because anybody that says that they can't obtain a photo ID or that the photo ID law is restrictive to them participating in the electoral process is not telling the truth. So I will tell you, and I tell all your viewers this, if you don't have an ID and you want one, you need to call 334-242-7200 and we'll come to your house and make an ID for you. Whatever it takes for every eligible U.S. citizen that's a resident of Alabama to be registered to vote and have a photo ID is what we're going to do.
I love it. John, tell me, now go back to the, you know, this electronic, other states do that, or you think of it yourself?
No, sir. Now, we have some others that have the electronic registration, but ours is unique in the fact that we use the driver's license as the modem to ensure the integrity and the credibility of the system. Now, I will tell you this. We have electronic voting that we've introduced too, and we're the only state in the union that does that. But the electronic voting is only for our military servicemen and women who've been deployed, who don't have an opportunity to vote absentee like you or I would, and for them to be able to participate by requesting their ballot electronically, completing their ballot electronically, and returning it electronically. It enables them to have their vote counted the same day, just like yours and mine. And I'm very proud of that. We're the only state in the union that's doing that.
John, you know what's staggering to me is the number of people who registered electronically. Give us those numbers again and during what time?
Yes, sir.
Started, when did it
yes,
start?
Sir. Between January 22nd. Now, let me say this. I told you we went live with it with a soft launch where we didn't announce it. January 22nd at 8 a.m. we went live with it. At 8:10 a.m. we had our first user from Mobile County. Somebody just found it through Google, just like you would if you were looking about a place you wanted to visit or something like that. And after he modified his record, all he did was change his address because he had moved. But between that day, January 22nd, and February the 1st, before Kayla put together our press conference where we had all the media come from around the state, had 15,000 users of the system. But between January 22nd and February the 15th, which was the last day to use it prior to the vote, had 61,089 users.
61,000.
61,089 users.
That's a lot
now,
of
Steve,
folks.
but let me tell you why that's so important. The reason it's so important is because the last day for you to have walked up to the Board of Registrars and turned your registration in, or you're modifying your record, was Friday the 12th of February. The last day for you to have mailed it in would have been Saturday the 13th of February, because on Monday the 15th was President's Day.
Yeah.
So all the courthouses except in Mobile were all closed that day. But Steve, on Monday, February the 15th, from 12:01 a.m. till 11:59 p.m., we had 8,969 users of the system that day. Now, why is that significant? Because that's 9,000 people that would not have been able to vote in the March 1st presidential preference primary if they had not had the electronic access. We had 1.25 million people vote, which is the highest number in the history of the state.
That's what I was fixing to ask you. So that March 1st primary, give how many Republican, how many Democrat?
850,000 Republicans, the rest were Democrats.
So what was the old record? Do you know ballpark?
It was about 1.1 million.
In what year was that? Last time?
No, sir. It was when President Obama and Secretary Clinton were running against each other
8 years
in 08.
ago.
And then Governor Huckabee, Senator McCain, Governor Romney, and your friend Fred Thompson were all in that in 08.
Was Fred still in the race?
He wanted to be.
Bush was still on the ballot. You know, he hadn't gotten off the ballot by the time the thing came.
Yes, sir.
But so anyway, you had 860,000 people voting. Was it close to voting the Republican primary?
Yes, sir. Which is the largest number in the history of the state.
What percentage was that voter?
Almost 43%.
And the average for the general elections is 50, ain't it?
Yes, sir.
In that
And
nationwide in Alabama?
we hope that we'll be topping that this time. And of course, as aggressive as the candidates have been, we anticipate that that could very well take place.
Yeah.
We have 3.1 million people registered in the state of Alabama, which is the highest number in the history of the state.
And we have about 1.5 probably voting general.
Yes, sir.
Depends on the election turnout. Well, John, our time's up. I hate to tell you, we had the best time talking. Folks, our guest tonight has been Secretary of State John Merrill, who comes on at least annually to our show, tell you what's going on in the state as far as politics and his office, Secretary of State's office. And we thank you for being with us, and we thank you viewers for watching Alabama Politics. Hope you'll tune again next week. We thank John Merrill, and we thank you for watching. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Steve. Always good to be with you.